Hi, hello, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's absolutely fantastic that so many of you have actually made it here to the Audimax and are participating live as we can, of course, after 2 years of COVID. We have a number of live participants here, and everybody who's out there at their screens, welcome, and everybody who's going to see the replay later on. And ladies and gentlemen, this session is going to be about how are we actually getting change going? How are we making this transition work that we need to make it work? And we have a grand lineup of participants, of panelists. But first of all, ladies and gentlemen, we have the man who is at the helm of getting this climate transition going in the EU. And I say hello to Frans Timmermans, the Executive Vice President of the European Commission. I mean, first of all, thank you very much, sir, for taking the time. I know your time is short, so let's make most of it. And I think these days we cannot talk about anything without mentioning the war and the Russian invasion in Ukraine with all its spillover effects. And I think even the last person on the street in Europe now knows that we do have supply chains and that everything actually belongs together. Now, the question is, in how far is the Green Deal, is the Fit for 55 program influenced by the changes due to the war, i.e. increased energy prices, changing supply chains of food? So, sir, take it away.
Well, first of all, I believe that we now understand, as you say, you're absolutely right in saying that every single European now understands our dependence on fossil fuels. And everybody understands that we need to be less dependent on outside providers of fossil fuels. Since we don't produce our fossil fuels ourselves, we need to look especially at alternatives. And the three main alternatives, in my view, are solar power, offshore wind energy, and biogases. And if we speed up our transition to those sources of fuel, first of all, we can reduce our energy bills. And secondly, we can send a clear signal to Mr. Putin that he is not able to blackmail us with his energy. I believe that in COVID, we had the same reaction first. Is the Green Deal still relevant now that we have the COVID pandemic? And then we understood that the green transformation was also an answer to the risks of a pandemic and the economic negative effects of the pandemic. Likewise, the energy transition is also an answer to the geopolitical challenge, which is our dependence on Russian fossil fuels.
Yeah, we had an earlier discussion today that also included circular economy as one of the means by which to speed up the process. Now, let's look at the transformation and at everybody who needs to carry it. You do have the buy-in of diverse governments, of course. You do have the buy-ins of politicians, of course, with some criticism. You have companies actually saying this is the right way to go. There's always this question mark. How do you actually take along the person in the street? How do you make it understood? How do you take them along and not have a Gilets jaunes movement all across Europe?
Well, first of all, I think we need to be very much aware of the fact that, like you said before, about everybody now being aware of the supply chains. I think most, if not all of our citizens are very much aware about the danger of the climate crisis we're in. Everybody understands that we need to do something. And I also believe that citizens are now also discovering their own power in all of this. You know, if people who can do it reduce the temperature in their houses by 1 degree only, it reduces our consumption of Russian energy or of natural gas by 10 BCM. It's an enormous 10 billion cubic meters of gas less, just 1 degree lower temperature in our houses. So this shows that the collective power of our citizens is huge in all of this. And that even by taking small steps, but if you prolong them over a long period of time, this transformation can be done. But the most important issue here is by using less energy, by being more energy efficient, by moving to renewable energy, you also, not just punish Putin, but you also reduce your monthly energy bill. And I think this is a huge incentive people understand. And you contribute to reducing our emissions and helping our climate. So it's a win-win-win-win situation. And I believe most of our citizens understand this, but many citizens are afraid they will be left behind, that they can't afford that. They can't afford the solar panels. They can't afford an electric car. And we have to prove to them that it is affordable, that it is feasible. You know, the 20% richest households in Europe are responsible for 32% of road transport and building emissions. And the 20% poorest households are only responsible for 9% of these emissions. So the poorest households should be helped, whereas the richer households should be asked to contribute more to our emission reductions. I think that's a fair deal. If we explain it clearly, then I think we can convince people to be part of it. The core issue here is this transition going to be fair and seen as fair by our citizens? If we can pull that off, if we can prove that, I think we will have massive support.
I've just come out of a session that was particularly concerned about carbon pricing and the fairness of it. One of the takeaways of diverse studies was that you have to make it fair and transparent. So what does the Commission do to make it transparent, i.e. actually really take the fear away from those households that say, oh gosh, we can't afford it, and actually taking them along, making them proactive, making them ambassadors of the policies?
Well, what we've done in industry, as you know, is we've for over many years already have a functioning emissions trading system. Direct carbon pricing, we put it into a market instrument, which is the emissions trading system. And it has helped us in industry tremendously. You know, over the last, since 1990, we have reduced our emissions by about a quarter. Whereas our economy has grown with over 60%. So we have decoupled the increase of emissions from economic growth. And now we need to do the same in households. We need to decouple the reduction of emissions from the cost that is incurred by our citizens. We believe that a dedicated emissions trading system for transport and buildings can help, but only if before introducing it, you would have in place a social climate fund that would help people to avoid the risk of energy poverty. So let's have the social climate fund functioning before we introduce a dedicated ETS system in transport and in buildings. And this system is, I think, transparent because it puts the onus on the ones who deliver the energy. And I think preliminary experiences in Germany with an ETS on road transport show that the effect at the pump is very limited, but the effect in behavioral changes by the producers of the energy is considerable.
Thank you very much for that. Now, our current policy answers to a climate crisis are tweaks. We sort of turn a lot of points, but it does not seem to be sort of one big throw, apart, of course, from Fit for 55 and all of that. Let's look at ETS. Still, emissions have been rising. Only a tiny fraction of emissions is actually captured by ETS. So how do we get away from this silo thinking and embrace more?
Yeah, I think we should not short sell what we've already achieved. You know, the ETS was introduced in 2005. Frankly, most people didn't believe in it in the first years. But in the sectors that are now covered by ETS, we've reduced emissions with about 43%. That's a huge success. So what we want to do now, that's a proposal of the Commission, is to introduce a new target to reduce emissions from the ETS sectors by 61% by 2030 compared to 2005 levels. That would be an increase of 18 percentage points compared to the target under the existing legislation. But it's, as you say, it's not the only tool we could use. We need to have a systemic transformation, a tectonic systemic transformation. And I think we should stick to the European Green Deal and the Fit for 55 package, because the Fit for 55 package gives you this transformation in only 8 years that we need to reduce our emissions with at least 55% by 2030 and reach climate neutrality by 2050. I hope we can get a common position of the Parliament on this Fit for 55 package before the summer. I also hope the Council can, even, in this very complicated situation with Ukraine, the Council can still move ahead with this. Because if we make the choice of this transformation, it will certainly strengthen our resilience in a world that will challenge Europe in an incredible way in the time to come. So I hope that if we can manage this transformation by combining all these tools to an intelligent policy mix, regulatory instruments, taxation, emissions trading, we can do all of that in the Fit for 55 package. We can achieve the transformation you were talking about. And of course, it is never going to be a revolution in a week. The 8 years, I mean, that's tomorrow. Just think back 8 years. It was like yesterday. So these 8 years we have now to reach this reduction are going to be very transformative years. And I hope we can convince industry, but especially our citizens, that they have to be part of this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Timmermans. I know that you've got to run in 4 minutes, but I'm still going to use those 4 minutes. So first of all, I'd like to share with you that when you used the word decoupling, I think Dennis Noah's heart went out and bubbled more fast than it has done today, because that's one of the words that has been associated with the Global Solutions Summit for a number of years. The second point is it's 5.5 years roundaboutish that we still have until we want to be not just fit for 55, we want to have achieved the 55. And some of the issues that we are covering, both on the policy front and also on the actual doing front, seem to be like operating on an open heart, simply because it hasn't been done before like this and it hasn't been done in this speed. How optimistic are you for the next couple of years that we're actually on the right pathway?
Well, it all depends on whether we have a collective sense of urgency. If we have a collective sense of urgency, we can move mountains. We saw it with the pandemic. How quickly did Europe not develop the best vaccines in the world? It was in Europe that these were developed at lightning speed. People said it takes a decade for a vaccine, or at least 5 years. Look how if Europeans understand the urgency of the climate crisis, they will come together and take the necessary measures in the pace that we need. We can really do this. The one thing I worry most about is that we fail to see that this is essentially an issue of social justice. This is essentially a core issue of politics about distribution and redistribution. If you think about politics, in essence, politics is only about one thing, and that's redistribution. And that doesn't matter whether it's left wing or right wing, it's always about redistribution. Giving tax relief to the richest people is redistribution, just as much as imposing higher taxes on rich people is redistribution. And we need to get this redistribution question right in a completely new context. We need, as humanity, to learn to live within planetary boundaries. And if we as Europeans can be successful in transforming our economy and society in a way that shows that we're able to live within planetary boundaries, we will have followers around the world who would like to copy our model. This is a huge opportunity for us, morally, socially, but also economically. And we need to seize this opportunity. We cannot face our children and grandchildren, in all honesty, if we don't do it now.
We all wish that you keep up your realistic optimism, Mr. Timmermans. Thank you very much to Brussels. We know you've got to run. Thank you very much for having been with us here at the Global Solutions Summit 2022. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, in a big thank you. I hope that you can still get the applause. I'd like to